There's a lot of people that say there should be more affordable housing, and speculators or landowners or developers, they're all greedy. Rental owners, landlords, basically, for that matter,
Right.
are all greedy. And I say, what's the alternative? The government building housing? Because you know what that looks like, right?
Right.
Look, I get it. The Toronto real estate market is confusing. Whether you're a new or experienced investor or just looking for a home to raise your family in, join us at Broadview Table Talks as we sit around the table with my friends and talk about the real estate and the ever-changing market in Toronto.
Welcome to podcast 46, and the topic is, does real estate investing still make sense in Toronto in 2023? What do you think? What are you seeing this week?
Right now,
Headlines.
honestly, it seems like the only people who can afford to invest in real estate are people that actually have access to the funds, because it's gotten insanely expensive for anyone who's, like us, who wants to invest in real estate, and we're not actually doing this full time. And as well as your mom and pop investors, it's just unfeasible now.
What do you mean you're not doing it? So if you're doing it full time, you can do it?
Well, it seems like if you're doing it full time and you have like the financing behind you, you've got a group behind you, you work for a company where like it's actually an investment oriented company. It seems like you just need a lot of cash to be able to make it work.
Okay, so what you're saying is not a full time or part time. It's more so that it doesn't work with leverage anymore.
Right.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
Right? Because our borrowing costs have gone from an all-time high, to basically from 0.25 to 5% now as an overnight rate, plus another 1 or 2 points, right?
Cheap credit's gone. It's not available anymore.
Right. And in the past, it used to be negative real interest rates, meaning that as long as you hold an asset, inflation will be higher than the cost of the capital, right? So inflation is rising at 7%, to say real estate on average for the past 2 decades was 7% year-over-year increases. But yet rates were 3%, 2%, 3%,
Overnight,
maybe 4% even at the very highest,
at the highest,
3%. So just by holding something for that's increasing for whatever you're holding, name X amount, it's going at 7% year-over-year increases. Meanwhile, it only costs you 3%. So in theory, it's going up by 4% just by holding something.
Yeah, just by holding
Free
something,
money.
you're beating inflation.
It's free money.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, it's the other way around and doesn't make sense anymore, in my opinion.
No.
But then this is a double-edged sword, right? So if there's no investors investing into projects and markets, then in theory, the price should come down because end users can actually buy it, right? But the problem is builders aren't building because there's no demand anymore, which means that with the amount of supply coming in, amount of immigration, the amount of demand coming in, supply just is not able to meet the demands.
Yeah. And we're just seeing this constant pressure where there's constant demand, but there's just unchanging supply. And then we constantly hear this, we need more supply, we need more supply. But the issue is no one's incentivized to actually build it because it's so expensive.
Yeah.
Like you don't make anything back.
Yeah, and we don't have the labor force. The cost of capital is extremely expensive.
Yeah, purpose-built rentals also don't see the reason to be built. Like there's just no return on it.
Right. So I think in the short run, it's there's gonna be a lot of pain in the next little while. So September 6th is the next rate increase.
Yep.
There's a lot of people saying that they won't increase this round, but there's going to be an increase by the end of this year. That's what a lot of people are saying. I don't know what will happen. No one knows what will happen. And I guess even the Bank of Canada doesn't know what happened because it's based on rates, data that's coming in, right?
No.
Not just inflation data. There's a whole bunch of things that are going into the GDP and unemployment and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So they don't know if they're going to raise, but there's a chance that they probably will raise rates.
I mean, they have this fixation on raising rates and hoping it'll address the economy in a way where real estate will slow down and then everything will be fixed. But
I don't think they're trying to slow down real estate, though. This clarification. They're not trying to slow down real estate. They're trying to bring the target of inflation down to 2%.
They are trying to bring the target of inflation down, with real estate being a portion of the inflation rate. But at the end of the day, it seems like there has to be a lot more done rather than just increasing interest rates.
Okay. Maybe.
Right. Like government spending is also at an all-time high.
Fiscal policy versus monetary policy. Yes, two different things for
Right.
sure. So the current government in power spends money, and the Bank of Canada is trying to be behind it with their monetary policy, trying to keep up with their fiscal policy spending, because that fiscal policy creates inflation.
Exactly.
But on one hand, the current government needs fiscal policy to help those that are in need, right? Which is like the general population, to rise it.
Right.
But the problem is, in order to do that, they have to spend money that they don't have because
Exactly.
we're not collecting enough.
Exactly. So
It's a big problem in the federal, in the provincial, and in the municipal levels.
yeah, And at the municipal levels, we're also going to feel a pinch with the new taxes that are coming in.
Potentially coming up. So I heard that Olivia Chow speech, and she basically said that we can't tax our way out of the problem because with 1.3 billion, that's B, of deficit spending every year. I think it was 1.3, something like that, but it was a billion number. Yeah. How are we ever going to tax that? So I think there was a quote of something like 38 million or something is if you increase it by 1%, you're only going to get 38 million.
I think with the proposed taxes, if they were to be fully implemented, I think we still have a shortfall of 60% of the total, 47 billion revenue that we actually need to keep the city functioning.
Certainly the billions, yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be tough, especially with the proposed taxes already, because then it's going to be the 1% increase to your sales tax. Then there's going to be the luxury home tax.
Yeah, these are all things that are proposed, right? So I also heard, exactly. They're going to potentially, well, at least talk about it's on the table, that they're having a 1% municipal tax on top of the 13% we already pay. Right. HST, the GST and PST. Yeah. It's going to be now a municipal tax, which is crazy, in my opinion. I mean, I guess kind of makes sense because there's 3 levels of government, but, that's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt.
Yeah, especially anyone who's already finding it difficult to afford living in Toronto and the municipal area already. Like, they're going to feel the squeeze even more.
Yeah, I mean, I guess ultimately, I wish the city of Toronto was a little smarter with their budget somehow. There's, with a big machine like that, it's going to be inefficient no matter what, right? But I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. They're poor. Canada's poor. Yeah, we're poor. Everyone's poor. It's a tough time right now with the recession for sure. And this is by design, right? Like we've had 2 decades of negative inflation rates, negative interest rates, I should say. Real negative interest rates.
Yeah, and we're paying for it now.
So that's the short-term risk, and by short-term I mean like next 1 or 2 years. I think that should eventually turn around at some point. Midterm risk is that for housing anyway, in the long run, there's definitely not enough building supply. But in the midterm, I would say that there's not enough labor supply. The cost of materials is too high. The cost of rezoning something and developing something is just way too high, and there's no buyers right now.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of thinking that we could actually see a future where there aren't enough people anymore because everyone's scared off by the increased living expenses of living in Toronto or in the GTA.
That's happening now.
It's happening now.
Yeah, a lot of new immigrants coming to our country and telling people back home, saying, don't come here. It's a horrible place.
That's right. And then eventually, what if it turns into a whole, well, why bother moving to Toronto at all? They just move to any of the more affordable cities throughout all of Canada. Yeah,
and I think that's exactly why the federal government is doing this 500,000 immigration target every year, right? Including like permanent residents, that is. Right. So including non-permanent, it's over 1 million people, like maybe I think something like 1.2 million people per year, because they know that there's going to be churn and not everyone's going to stay. Right. Right. So disadvantage of doing something, like of not doing it, like if you weren't having a strong immigration policy, we would end up being a declining population.
For sure.
Right. With aging population like Japan or China, with a whole 1 kid policy that they had for a long time, right? So because of that, they only allowed, for those of you who don't know, they had a 1 kid policy where, I don't know why they did this, maybe but they only allowed you to have 1 child. And what happens if you have 2? What happens if you have an accident?
Well, I mean.
Then what? You got to get rid of it? Like, yes. Is that what happens?
Yes.
Anyway, that's horrible.
Dark times. They were dark times.
Communist government, right? I guess maybe because the resources were low or whatever, but that was short-sighted because now in the long run, they have a much more aging population.
It's difficult to balance when you only had 1 child, and then, with Chinese culture, they tended to prefer males.
Right.
So, dark history aside, now they're in a situation where it's difficult for them to actually control the future birth rates because, first of all, there aren't enough women in parts of China.
Right.
And, now you're telling people, have as many kids as you want. It's like, it doesn't just happen overnight.
Right. So, yeah, and I guess the issue of China as well, too, is not as multicultural as Canada is, for example. Like we have different diasporas, I think is what's called, where we have, people from different cultures bringing other people from their family back home to come here as well, too. So I think we're increasing in more of a mosaic, as they used to call it back in the day, which is fabulous for Canada. That's something we have going on as well.
It's great. Having diversity is great. Having more of different things and sort of pushing the boundary of what you're used to is great. It's actually interesting that you bring that up because one of the things that the ministry or the government is saying is that universities and colleges actually have to do their part in increasing housing supply as well. They haven't specified exactly how or what their responsibilities are. But if you think about it, a lot of people coming here, they might not be permanent residents, but 800,000 students do come to Canada every year, or at least they did last year. And they take up housing stock as well, whether it's on a yearly basis or whether it's 8 months. Minus the summer months.
So they're kind of is this in the news? They're saying
in the news.
They want institutions before accepting people in, they want them to create on-campus housing.
Well, they have
off-campus.
They've been very high level with it so far. They haven't actually announced any long-term or any concrete plans, but they are saying, look, this is possibly one of the ways that we can alleviate the situation, because we do have a lot of people coming in. We do have 500,000 immigrants coming to Canada and trying to stay here long-term. Not only do we have that, but we also have 800,000 students coming here and taking up housing stock as well.
Right. Which is, in the long run, I think, going to create a huge problem for our housing stock, for our housing market, and imbalances, really, for that matter, because the demand is here, yet the supply isn't here.
For sure.
So,
but the 800,000 people that do demand housing stock as well also leave at the end of every year, which makes it a little bit trickier to handle. But it doesn't change the fact that we actually have a significant...
it kind of stops that part of it, basically. The non-temporary, the non-permanent resident portion should be taken care of through this policy if possible. That's super cool. I wish along with that they gave better zoning so they could build
purpose-built rentals
for students, student
for
campus.
Students.
Allowed some sort of credit, so you're not paying HST in these units, or it's crazy. Like, it's like a third of the cost of building something is government taxes. That's insane. So it
blew our minds when we saw that presentation a few years ago.
Yeah, well, not even that. Like, for people that don't know or not, if you're building a $1 million house or $1 million, let's call it a unit, that's $1 million. You're paying HST on all of that.
Yeah.
That's $130,000.
Yeah, HST from your taxed income.
That's insane. So, just to build something, I don't know. And I'm sure if you're going to build a building, it's going to be 100 units, right? And if you came in for purpose-built rental, then you have to pay that HST.
Yeah.
Actually, no, is HST on rental? No, it is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
You still have to create it. Yeah, on self-supply or whatever it's called. That's insane. That's a lot of money. Not to mention development levies, right? So there's HST, there's development charges, which could be, I think this year was $50,000 for just a bit over $50,000 for one bedrooms. And 60,000 for two bedrooms or something like that.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. That's exactly why no one's building.
Or less people are building.
Or less people are building. I shouldn't say no one, not extremes. There are fewer people building.
Yeah. So that's already 20%. Plus then you have parkland dedication, a whole bunch of, no, seriously, there's a lot of things. I mean, I get it. Okay. So all these people, and part of the development levies is that the more people you bring into the system, the more sewers are going to use, the more water supply they're going to use, the more
electricity,
roads,
right,
schools,
public transit,
all that.
Yeah.
So they should pay their fair share. But in my opinion, that's what ongoing taxes are.
Yeah.
Right. Not just the one-time entry fee. It's the ongoing property taxes that you should be paying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're thinking about raising property taxes as well, in addition to all the other taxes and fees that they're implementing.
So maybe all the different various levels, the provincial and even federal, because it's HST, maybe they can reduce those portion of the entry taxes of creating new supply and shift it over to it's not ideal, but the current owners, right?
Yeah.
The tax revenues and increasing that. The problem is, the reason why it probably doesn't get voted in is because they don't get voted in, because the people that are voting aren't the new people. The people that are voting are the people that are currently the constituents of these provinces, countries, cities, right?
Right.
So they're going to vote this down for sure.
For sure.
That's why it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to make up the revenue. So I don't know what the solution is. I mean, maybe the city should be, well, I guess they are with Creatio, trying to be part of development, right? Part of the development side.
Right. Yeah.
So actually, you know what? I had a comment post ready to go. I'm about to post it soon. But there's a lot of people that say there should be more affordable housing, and speculators or landowners or developers, they're all greedy. Rental owners, landlords, basically, for that matter,
right,
are all greedy. And I say, what's the alternative? The government building housing? Because you know what that looks like, right?
Right.
That's a communist block. That's a communist apartment block.
Right.
That just eventually turns into a slum. Right. Because they're not maintained, they're not built well, they don't follow codes.
There's no incentive to maintain it or to make it livable.
Correct. Yeah. And there's no incentive because there's no, it's not as efficient, put it that way.
Right.
And I think The alternative to doing that, or the best way to do that, and the way we currently exist right now, the way we do it, is that the government finances the local private individual developers to build by way of the CMHC, Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation. That's a federally crown corporation, I think it is. But anyway, it's tax money that they're giving favorable rates to the developers and people that qualify for it. But of course, qualifying for CMHC financing is not easy. It's actually really hard.
And it takes a while to actually do that.
It takes a long time. And so it's not like, I guess they can't handle free money all the time, right? But essentially it's cheaper money. So it is kind of like free money. But I think that's the only way to do it. So I think they really have to beef up the CMHC policies. And in my opinion, what they could do right away is lower the tax for incentivizing people to build new homes, which in theory will create more homes and have a bigger tax base.
Right.
But I'm not at that level of government, so I don't know. But like,
well, proposing to cut any taxes, I think, is probably a big no-no.
For what? Income taxes, property taxes?
Well, any kind of tax, because that's their revenue. Right now, they're all about trying to maximize their revenue and reduce their expenses.
I don't know, man. It's kind of like if you had a apartment building in some small remote town with not a big population, what do you do to get people in, right? You kind of discount the first couple months of rent. You give them 2 months rent free or something.
No, that's true, but you're more efficient because you're a private landlord then at that point. You're thinking, okay, how do I incentivize people to actually do this so that it works for me well in the long run?
I don't know. It's easy for us to sit here in our little office here.
You're a keyboard warrior.
Yeah, I know what's going on in the world. Like I have no freaking clue what's going on in the world and, in Canada and what's happening behind the scenes. But
we don't have the pressure of responsibility and answering to people.
We just sit here and talk about it in the background. But at the end of the day, we're in a huge housing crisis for the next decade, at least, at the very minimum.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what the end goal is. I don't know what the end result is. But I know that back to our topic, doesn't make sense to invest in 2023 in real estate. If you can, yes, it makes sense.
Yeah, only if you can.
Only if you can. Yeah. And you're not super leveraged. Because, guess what's going to happen once the rates come back down and leverage becomes cheaper? Price is going to shoot right up, right?
Up.
It's waiting.
Well, we see blips every now and then. Every time someone thinks that the Bank of Canada is going to pause the rate hike, they immediately jump back into the market.
Yeah, we'll see just under 6 and we'll see what happens. Yeah. I'm starting to see bidding wars as well again.
Absolutely.
Yes, there's more inventory coming in the market, and I think on one hand, a lot of people aren't going to be like. It doesn't seem like the government, Bank of Canada, is going to lower their policy rate anytime soon.
No.
Within next year or even like next 12 months, they're probably not going to drop it.
Right.
So a lot of people are going to start hurting and not going to be able to keep up with the pace, whether it comes, renewal time or the time to get a new mortgage, right? That's going to be an issue. So I just think that, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough times. And I think we're going to see a lot more listings coming onto the market. You're starting to see the months of inventory starting to increase a little bit.
Yes.
Starting to see the sales to new listings ratio. The ratio of sales to the amount of new listings coming in the market is declining, meaning that there's less sales. Or more new listings.
For sure.
So I think we're going to have a lot more choice in September and October.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, if rates don't go up, which they probably won't, I don't know if they will or won't, but if they don't, there's going to be a lot more people waiting on the sidelines that can't wait anymore, need to buy something, want to invest into something. Those people are going to jump back into the market.
Yeah.
And we'll see who wins out.
It's going to be a constant battle between the two.
Yeah, and the problem is, I guess, the 5-year bond rates, the fixed mortgages, they're going up. It's been apparently the highest. It's a 20-year high right now.
Right.
So money's not cheap.
No.
If you have money and you're downsizing maybe potentially, it's a good time to liquidate your properties and buy something on the cheap, buy a few properties on the cheap. Or if you're looking to upsize, maybe now is not the time to do it. Hold off.
Yeah.
But if you're looking to downsize, I think it's a good time.
Might be a good time.
Yeah. Or looking at deleverage. It's probably the best time right now because it's so scary. And I think there's going to be higher leverage coming up. Like it's going to, people are saying that it's inevitable that rates are going to go up for the next 12 months.
Right.
I heard like double-digit rates. I don't know if it's true or not. Who knows? But let's see what happens.
Oh, that's going to hurt.
So in theory, is it a good time to buy real estate in 2023? I'm not sure, but if you need to sell, I guess you need to sell, or you need to buy, you need to buy.
Yeah. Like if you absolutely have to move, there's always a good reason for it, but you better make sure it is an actual good reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks, guys. Catch you next week.
Add it up.
Thanks for sticking out to the very end. I hope you got some value out of this. Do me a favor, please press like and subscribe, but more than anything, leave me some feedback so we know what to produce for you going forward. Thanks again.